But we said this podcast is all like basically two mates that are, I'm going to say we're semi-decent at business, like having a chat about all the things that are happening and coming along. We both run successful businesses, like, well, let's not be harsh, but that's for other people to say. And today we said we wanted to talk about data, but I think specifically we've got like a whole list of topics. We're going to talk about mistakes people make with data, the one or two things you really need to know to make data useful, and then questions that you can apply to data. And then something else that I think we should like have a look at, tangentially related, is why Google is going to get absolutely smashed by AI. And I think that's helpful because Google's a big data warehouse, basically, isn't it? So yeah.
I'm excited to talk about these topics today because data on the surface as a topic tends to make people's eyes glaze over a little bit. But if you're going to optimize your business, you need data to be able to do it. You need to know what you're actually improving, right? So before you get started with optimizing, you need to have a set of things that you're measuring, right? And if you don't even have that, what are you optimizing for? What are you listening to this podcast for? What are you actually doing in your business? Is it like a hobby business? Like, the whole point of optimizing in a business is to improve it. How do you know how to improve it? What makes it good? What makes it bad? Well, you have to have a benchmark. You have to have a starting point, and that's where good old data comes in, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a friend who he sells copywriting for people, and he says early doors he thought that people would come to him and say, I want you to produce me Facebook posts because it's more efficient, saves me time, saves me money, or I want you to produce me SEO content because you can do it better. He says, but most people coming at any services, consulting services, or starting their business,
what did they ask for?
Well, they don't know what to ask for because it's like, tell me what to do. And so if you're in that place where you're a bit stuck and you're trying to evaluate something, the best place to start is just, well, what data is in front of me? And then to start to interpret that, which I think is what we're going to talk about. I think we're going to talk about like how you make that useful. Or certainly I'd like to get into like data and the value of it before we go into the tools and tactics and everything else.
I got a funny story for you quickly then. So I learned how to build my first website when I was like 18. So that is years ago.
5 years ago, right?
25 years ago. Yeah, 25 years ago. I know. It doesn't look like it, I know. But,
I thought you were in your late 20s, Vicky.
Age has been kind to me. But I learned how to build my first website 25 years ago. And I was so into like the creative side of it, building websites, build them, right? And I slowly turned it into my hobby, into a job. I went to work as a marketing person, predominantly to help this training business with their website, and then went to help a big publishing company, EMAP, in central London, build mini websites for advertisers. After that job, I headed off to Australia, and at this point, I'd never needed to worry about installing any type of tracking. That was just never requested, right? Because as far as the advertisers were concerned, it was how many people clicked from our advertorial or microsite through to their website. They were doing the measurement. And the ads that we were running on the different publisher sites, well, they were tracked by the ads team. My job still was just to build websites, build pages, and create the banners and buttons and everything. So it's only when I left and I went to Australia and I worked in this little agency. It was a part of Ogilvy called Ogilvy Action. And they created like websites for experiential related campaigns, right? So things that were happening, they did like Bark in the Park style promotions, activations as they called them, right, in the agency world. And we built one website for one of the account directors and her clients. We were like a little sub team that was sort of tacked onto the side of the agency. And that's what we did. I worked with 3 incredible developers. I was a gatekeeper to their time and stopped them, being over-promising things. And
as developers do.
Yeah, and taking on too many amends and stuff. Like, I think I wasn't welcome by the agency who previously been able to just tap those developers on the shoulder. But again, not really asked for kind of tracking stuff. And one of the account directors came downstairs and said to me, do you know how many hits we've had on the so-and-so website? I said, did you ask for tracking to be installed? Back then, Google Analytics wasn't so ubiquitous. There was all sorts of other paid tracking platforms that agencies and big brands like using. I should know. What was the point of the website? It's just like, well, to generate traffic for this campaign. It's like, well, how on earth were you ever going to measure it? And she genuinely looked bewildered and lost. She's like, I don't know. And it's like, your website's been live for 6-7 months, right? She's like, yeah. I was like, well, we can go to the server and at least look at the server stats, right? So you've got some data that you can pass back to your client. And for her, it didn't matter what the data was, as long as there was a number. She could say, hey, the website's had 100,000 hits or whatever, right? But it wasn't meaningful data. And that was my first experience of like, what was the point of spending tens of thousands of dollars getting like this website built, possibly 100,000 plus with this campaign, and then not measuring the success of it on the other side. And same when I went to work for the little agency that I helped grow, we were very much into Google AdWords and SEO in the beginning, as well as building websites. And we were running a PPC campaign for one pharma company. And the media buyer reported back to me and said, yeah, it's great. We've had 10,000 clicks on this campaign. I was like, great. And what did the users do once they clicked? Did they go on the website? Did they do the thing? She looked at me, she's like, I don't know. We've had 10,000 clicks. And so it was just really amazing that everyone stays in their lane when it comes to data. Hey, I did the thing I was meant to do, pat back. But what happens next, right? And that is the important part of why you do anything in your business.
We kind of touched on this when the other week we were talking about, Jane Doe who starts her candle business and goes through all the motions. Like, you can measure data. Like, as a runner, you can go, okay, well, this running shoe weighs 127 grams and we see that it gives a 37% improvement in performance. And this Lycra is, improves your aerodynamic efficiency by whatever percent. And that's all data. But it doesn't matter if you're running like the 100 meters in 20 seconds. Like, that's the data that matters. And I guess what we're driving at, or where you're heading with this, is like, well, there's loads of data. But then, and this is kind of the tease you gave at the beginning, like, well, the one thing you really got to know is how to use your data and how to interpret it. I think that's why we start to look at AI and Google and all the rest of it, because there's so much data out there. But actually, we're moving into a world where you've got to be more human than ever, able to ask better questions, able to do the creative bit, able to join together two things which seem disparate, which don't seem to track. I mean, the example you're giving, it's like, okay, this company wants to make money. So for all this effort we're putting in, forgetting clicks and whatever else, like how much money we generating, that's what we're bothered about.
Absolutely. And it becomes really easy to just pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I created my new product today. Great. Well, how many of your new product do you need to sell in order to make money? How many people do you need to reach in order to sell one of those products? How much is a conversion? Like these are the important questions you need to ask yourself, not how many visitors have I had to my website today? Like that, the data has to be meaningful to what you need to achieve in your business. And you need to zoom in and zoom out at the 10,000 foot view on a regular basis when it comes to data, so that you don't get lost in the weeds of going, hey, I've done my one thing. Hey, I got clicks on my thing. Great, I'm going to go on holiday for 10 weeks now. Right? And conversely, you need to make sure that you are tracking in detail as well.
Yeah, in engineering, we have, in support especially, but all engineering, there's this principle of root cause analysis. And basically what it gets down to is like asking really good questions until you get to we hear like people talk about first principle thinking and getting down to the nuts and bolts, to the root, the reason why. And doctors do this, like you come in with a set of symptoms like, oh, my back's hurting, and it's not instantly, well, there's an issue with your back. It's like, okay, well, you could have an issue with your quads being tight or the way you're carrying or you're pregnant. Like, the symptoms aren't necessarily the cause, and it's the same in business. And I remember working on this project. I was looking after the health of a fleet of aircraft. So we're looking at structural health. And there was this symptom coming back, which was that I actually can't say the specific detail, but there was a symptom coming back that it was like, oh, this part of the aircraft is having some overwhelming fatigue. And we think maybe there's an issue there. And then you start initially the investigation to someone mechanical. Think of it like your car. Like there's this knocking noise or this noise coming from that corner. And instantly, like for, to treat the symptom, you go, oh, well, that bit's knackered, we're going to replace it. But the root cause, you start to say, well, is it manufactured correctly? Is it assembled correctly? And you could initially just isolate that problem, but actually you might want to look at how that car is being driven or this aircraft is being flown, as the case was. And what we found in this particular instance was that the way the aircraft was programmed up, the way the flight control computers were programmed up, was actually applying additional stress unnecessarily because of the way it was performing the maneuvers. And in the vehicle, it might be, all right, well, it turns out that you always bounce the curb when you park. That's why the shocker's gone over there. And it's down to the driver, actually not the mechanical bit. And in business, it could be the same. It's like, oh, we're getting all these sales over here and we're spending loads on paid marketing. But none of your sales could be coming from paid marketing. It could all be referral. Like just because two things are true, does causation isn't correlation? Is that the right term? Or correlation isn't causation? Whatever the phrase is.
Yeah, totally. Like for us in my agency business, we help you create like a Facebook ads campaign, for example, and create amazing videos and creative, and we'll get you clicks on those ads through to your website. But if your website or your landing page is terrible and it's not going to convert, it just renders the work that we're doing useless. So we take an active interest in what happens with our traffic once it goes over to a client's asset and beyond, actually. Like, because if we are able to like generate leads, for example, for a client, I want to know, what were those leads like when you called them up? What was the quality? Like, because that really helps us, like at the start of that kind of data line, if you like, understand if these ones and noughts who are clicking are actually the people that we want to sell to. So it's like we really zoom in and then do that kind of zooming out again, a little bit like you looking at that production line with aircraft, right? I think if we can like figure out while we chat here, like what is a good place to start in terms of what you decide to track in your business, because it can be really confusing. I think like the quick win, definitely, and people tend to forget this, is revenue, right? You should be tracking revenue. And if you're not tracking revenue, like how is this a hobby business? How are you paying yourself? Like how are you earning a living?
Yeah, I think why don't we give some principles, like, okay, so whatever the situation is, like these are some questions you can ask to start informing yourself, and then we could go into the specifics, because revenue is a great one. So I think if you want to do root cause analysis, like you just want to be like that 4 or 5 year old child, and literally you want to just ask why 4 or 5 times, and you will often get to the root cause. Just why? Yeah, why is the sky blue?
Why?
Like.
Why? Yeah, I get 10 of those every car journey home from school. Like, why is there a cat in the window? Yeah, okay, we're going down that road. I love that.
Yeah, so I think because we get taught early on, like we teach kids, stop asking all the questions, please. Like, this is a good thing. And then just the 6 questions, who, what, when, why, where, how, like, all really useful tools. All the data in the world doesn't help you ask those questions. Like only you can do that. So this is like the mother skill, as I think of it. But yeah, let's get into the finance thing. Because again, like, I don't know if you've ever looked at financial reports. You probably get one from your accountant. Like,
oh my God, I love financial reports.
Okay.
I live for a financial report. Yeah, I've seen a few in my time.
Well, I've got a confession to make. When I first started in my business, it all started with a load of help, to be honest, from someone I'd worked with previously. I was in my early 20s. This is beyond just being self-employed and returning a tax return. This is like proper company accounts. And this friend that I had said, all right, Sam, you're setting up doing this. Okay, great. Here's my accountant. Go use him. So I went and spoke to the accountant. I was like, I'm going to be doing some business. He's like, all right, you need a limited company. I was like, yeah, sounds good to me. He's like, yeah, well, the turnover you're going to be doing, this contract you've got and everything else, like you'll need this and you'll need limited company accounts. And I was like, okay, how much does all this cost? And he gave me a figure and I was like, okay. And I checked with my mate. It's like, yeah, that sounds about right. It's like, all right then. And then the next thing, you've got a limited company now. I was like, oh, right, okay. Later found out that's actually cost £7. I paid 300 quid for it, but there we go.
Oh like markup of
And then
the
12
century.
12 months later, I mean, they did some other stuff. I think he saw me coming, but I still have this accountant, by the way. He's really good. But like 12 months later or after that financial year, and I had so much fear around this. He then got in touch with me and was like, all right, Sam, we need to have a meeting to finalize your end of year accounts. I was like, that sounds important. Yep, I'll go down to your office. And he there's like 7 reports prepared and he's going, okay, so this is what's going on. And I'm thinking, I can read numbers, like I'm good at data, but what the hell is all of this? Because in my mind, like I got a bank account, I see some money coming in, I know some money's going to have to go out because there's going to be tax and things. I go, it's 20, 30%. Okay, well, we'll keep that to one side. And I know I've got some expenses. I'll probably pay myself this. And I was doing and did for the first 2 or 3 years of my limited business, turning over 6 figures, by the way, like good money, decent amount of money. I did bank account management, like bank balance accounting. That's how I managed my business. And that was okay. Like that, I survived. I made a profit, paid a shed load of tax. I probably could have done it more efficiently, but I knew the core principle there, which is like profit, expenses, revenue. Like I understood how those figures all related to one another and survived.
The business basics, right? So if you bring in enough money, you can pay yourself, you can pay for the running of your business, you can pay a little chunk off to the government, and if there's any left over, you can reinvest it in your business and grow it. Just sort of simple business ABC there. I did a training in my membership recently, actually, and I've been doing this training for 3 years. It's like the 3rd year in a row. And I always say to everyone, like, make sure you pay yourself in your businesses. Are you all paying yourself, right? And people will confess to me that they've not paid themselves. They've run the business and used all of the money they've made to keep the business running, because they feel like they have to. And, it's taken me pointing out to them that they could earn more in a job, or they could, that they're running a hobby business, essentially. They're just taking the money to kind of make sure the business stays afloat. And that's just not really a proper business. So you do need to make sure that you're bringing in enough, or you've targeted enough revenue to pay your own bills. A good place to start with that is like, what would you expect? What's the market rate for the job that you're doing, right? And if you don't know that, then you should know what revenue you want to bring in for your business, because you've always run a business. But most of us have had paid jobs. Have you had a paid job, Sam Jax? You must have done.
Not for a decade. Yeah, so I haven't had a paid job for over a decade. But I have started in joint ventures taking a salary as part of the joint venture. So yeah, I do still get pay slips. But can we just rewind this a little bit? Because I think it'd be really good if we said, right, if you're 0 to 1, what data are you bothered about? Like, and look at salaries and blah, 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 and make that decision. But what occurred to me is only just then, as I was saying, like, I basically winged it a little bit and was okay. The reason I was okay is because there's one piece of data there that we didn't mention, was a market that really needed what I had. You see, all kinds of sins get committed, like all the rules get broken. There's all these optimizations that you can talk about, like improving conversion rate, improving your email optimization, improving cash flow management, optimizing credit usage, and all this stuff you can do great. But do you know what? If someone's willing to pay you £1 million for something that only costs you a tenner, you got a lot of flex there to, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, yeah, maybe I could save 1% or 2%. Don't need to, though. Like, I didn't have to be really shrewd with all that cash flow management, because it was like, there's a starving market over here. There's a starving crowd that I could rely on that cash flow, which is, let's just be clear. That was luck.
That is a nice problem to have.
It was, yeah. And I was lucky, like really lucky, that I got that break, and it probably gave me a false sense of security, like early on, truthfully, because it was just like, oh yeah, I can kind of rely on this client's just going to keep paying me, and because they have such a deep need here for it, and yeah, okay, all the optimization, meh, so what? Like, because the problem's so big and everything else. So I think starting out, that's probably the most important data thing you could look at. Forget everything. Forget every other optimization. Like, and I think we've said this in another episode. Like, is there massive demand there, and can you tap into it? Because it's like, when there's a hole in a high pressure pipe. Like, that water is coming out and all you have to do is catch some of it.
Okay. So, I mean, so we're in a couple of scenarios here, right? One is, okay, if you're just starting out with a new product or a new service and you don't know, like you're going to go out and test the market and see if people want to pay you. Like there is an unknown there, right? Or it could be that you're already in an established business and you want to understand how to make sense of the traffic and the cash that's already coming into your business and kind of how to measure that. And I think in this instance, like if we can talk about slightly more established businesses, let's just say like you have got cash coming in for a product or a service, but you don't know what data to track meaningfully, like you need to make sure you are tracking how much you pay yourself, because otherwise it's just none of this is worth it. Like you're just doing a hobby business. And then to your point, the next thing you probably should be looking at is market demand, for sure. Like what is the rate that you're currently selling your thing at? Is it a schlep to get people to hand to get them to hand their cash over to you? You know, is it really hard? And is it hard beyond market conditions? Like, because we're going through a so-called start of a recession right now, and you know, there's definitely an economic downturn. Is your business, you know, something that might be affected by that, but probably could be buoyant in better times? Like you kind of got to roll with the punches there. Or is it that you just can't sell the thing? Like you're trying to sell, you know, tea in China, as the phrase goes, or, you know, you've just got something that people don't want or need right now. And it has got nothing to do with economic, you know, conditions in the world or whatever. I think if we go down that road of like, assuming people already have like a business started, what's some other really good things that they could be measuring? Let's just say like we kind of take it the next step and it's like, okay, yeah, like, so you need to track your revenue. You need to pay yourself. You need to look at the rate that you're selling. So we probably need to look at sales targets, right? Would that be something good to tracking your business?
Yeah, definitely. I think we should probably, let's do a bit of a case study on some kind of business. We'll just make it up to have a narrative go through it. And as well, we keep talking about tracking, like things you want to track, but also I think we want to say, well, hang on, you predict some of this. A lot of this is predictive. So these are things to measure.
Yeah, like the definition of tracking for me is like to log, right? To at least log, because you need to like look in your bank account and see how much cash is in there. You need to know in your ledger book how many sales you've come through, right? So that for me is like the definition of tracking.
Well, let's just hypothetically then, e-commerce business, selling candles, our favourite topic. Yeah, and let's say it's a one-person business with maybe 2 virtual assistants. They're using Shopify as their back end and their front end, in fact, like for their full system. And they're plugged into some drop shipping, you know, print on demand type service. So for anyone listening that isn't familiar with this, Shopify is a plug and play system. You pay a subscription each month. It gives you an e-commerce website and you can build a blog and there's all kinds of other clever stuff you can do. And then you can integrate that with a third party supplier. So this is a company that all they do, they're a fulfillment center and they take your customer's order, which you handle or your on-site store handles a transaction for, and then they fulfill it. So, you know, one vanilla candle with some custom writing on, you know, Merry Christmas to my darling wife, name X. I don't know anyone called name X, but you get the idea. Like they scribe that up.
Elon Musk's son is called X. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. So how much are your candles? And then they send them out. And often they will also handle the 3PL, which is, you know, like the fulfillment, the logistics of, so 3PL, sorry, third-party logistics, like the postage, transport of the item. So all you're essentially doing is responsible for getting the traffic, handling the sale, and fulfilling it. So that's the top and tail of the business. And let's throw some figures around it. What's the markup on a candle? Like 80%? So let's say you're selling candles at 10, 20 quid.
Yeah. So definitely, so you just highlighted another thing there. I think it's really important to track over a period of time, which is the cost of what it takes to do your business. And then, you know, versus the price of what you're going to be selling that product or service against. And that's how you create that figure.
Yeah, so let's do a 12-month, you know, overview of this business. And let's say that they've gone through the startup phase. What level of sales do we need? So let's say the average transaction value is 20 quid and if it's a 6-figure business, let's do revenue at 200K.
Well, that's interesting there that you're starting from the big figure, right? Because by the way, I'm in the big figure camp here, right? Because you need to start with what do you need to earn, right, as a salary first. I think like that's really important. So let's just say you're in your candle business and you want to take home after tax 50K every year, right? That would be like a nice to have, right? So that's like the starting point. But let's just say for each candle you're going to sell it what, like 20 quid, right? And how much does each candle take to manufacture, are we saying here, like 5 for example?
Yeah, 20%. Yeah, call it a fiver, and then a couple of quid postage. Your margin is probably a tenner. It occurs to me that maybe we also want to talk about how you get to that £50,000 salary figure. I mean, like, what data do you want to measure to get there?
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's like that is a what does it take for you to live like figure, right? So in that figure you'd be paying your own personal rent, childcare costs, shopping, new pair of glasses, clothes for yourself, like just living costs, right? That, and then having like a nice bit of money to put into savings, holiday, pension, like the things we've spoken about before, like why are you doing what you do? Like what life do you want to have for the business that you're having? So like that figure should satiate that essentially. And I hear where you're going with this, Sam. I think it's really important to track this as well. Like I personally track my own personal finances by expenditure, well, it's incredibly boring. It's in a spreadsheet. It's like by expenditure, where I'm paying my debt off, how I'm paying into a pension, like what are the things I'm striving for. Like I track everything. I use all the facilities to create little savings spaces and everything. And I check back in and optimize that every quarter. I don't just like earn money and then, but that, that's a personal finance thing there, isn't it?
If we refer to the Business Bible, the 4-Hour Work Week, this is one of the first tasks in there is to establish your dreamline, as he calls it, which makes me cringe a little bit. Because this is the why. Like, I think it's really important because we're saying 50K. It's like, well, go get a job then, potentially, because you can earn that. Maybe we'll just park that as an assumption. You're happy with 50K, and for whatever reason, a business is the thing that makes sense. We'll revisit this, but we'll just highlight there straight away. Like, you want to ask some questions. Who, what, when, why, how, what, where, when, where. You want to ask the 6 questions around the 50K figure and not just roll over into, well, I want a business, and question your motivation around all this stuff, I guess. So let's say that, okay, the 50K is your take-home figure that you're aiming for.
Yeah, well, so if we're going to like at least get you that figure, like you'd have to sell 20 quid a pop, you'd have to sell 2,500 candles a year.
That's revenue though, right?
Yeah, like that's revenue. But the problem with that is, and I think it's really important to note that, is that you need to treat what you pay yourself different from that overall revenue, because what you pay yourself is a cost. So actually, in fact, it takes like, what are we saying, 5, how much to manufacture a candle?
Yeah, we're saying a fiver, yeah.
A fiver, okay, to manufacture a candle. And you're going to sell it for like 20 quid, you're going to make 15 on top of that, right? Which is great. But then there's other costs that need to be taken out of that, right?
That's your gross margin, isn't it? So if I was doing this cash flow forecast, I would personally, my approach would be to identify all of the operations that need to happen in the business day to day. So you are a cog in the wheel, and you attribute 20, 30 hours of tasks to yourself a week. And then you say, okay, I'll need a virtual assistant that'll do customer support. Let's say for 40 hours a week, I need a virtual assistant that'll do marketing, let's say, for 40 hours a week. So they're costs, they're like fixed costs. And then
and they're costs that will enable you to sell the amount of candles that you need in order to bring in the revenue in order to pay yourself, right?
Yeah. So in my mind, when evaluating the business, this is the process I go through. And then you say, okay, what are all the software costs? Okay, well, Shopify subscription, insurance, like you've got all this stuff that is needed. And this is all assuming that you've already been through the startup process. So you've got this fixed set of costs, which then drives out, okay, well, I know for every candle I sell, I have 7, 8, it wouldn't be unreasonable to say £10 of costs in there. The manufacturing, the postage, you can have a level of returns that you want to include in there. So you say, okay, for every one sale, I'm making about £10 gross margin. So then let's say your fixed cost is, for easy maths, 100 grand a year. The maths is easy. If you're making a £10 gross margin, then you can do the 100 grand divided by 10. So 10,000 sales. But then it's like, okay, well, is the demand out there for 10,000 sales? And if so, how much is the cost of procuring that demand? And these are the essential questions. All this data is great, but you need to be able to ask these questions. Like if you've got a fire hose of demand, like, oh my goodness, I wish there was like liver scented candles for, men that are under the age of 25, and there just isn't the supply out there. Well, you're going to have no issue selling your 10,000 candles.
I know you love a framework, so let's just like bookend this bit, because I think we've talked quite a lot about like looking at the sort of the finance and kind of figures tracking here. So you do need to know what the costs are in your business, and you need to track those. And it's really important that you track those if any of your costs rely on external parties, external factors. Like my husband's event production business, they build in wood gets imported. The cost goes up as soon as there's a fuel crisis and issues with China, any sniff of an economic crisis, people jack the cost of wood up, and he has to pass those costs on like to his customers, otherwise his margins decrease. So you do need to know those things. You need to know how much does it cost to deliver your service or product, and how much do you need to pay yourself as well. You also need to make sure you put aside money for the tax man, as you noted before as well. And therefore, that's how you kind of roughly get to that revenue figure. And if you're a business that just wants to continue as is, you would stick with that revenue figure over the year, I guess, and maybe track it as you're winning every month. But ultimately, most businesses are quite seasonal, whether you like it or not. Like I'd say the majority are. I'm just punting on this. I don't have stats to back it up. But considering this is a data episode, I'm going to make some up and just say apparently 88% of businesses are like that. You need to review all of those figures at least quarterly, right? Because so much can change in 3 months. A year ago, life was great a year ago. We weren't talking about Ukraine, or there was a bit of a fuel crisis issue. Like we weren't talking about economic downturns.
Bit of a killer virus.
Yeah. Bring back the coronavirus. That's what I say. But so much can change. So you have to keep adjusting.
You have an agenda for that, like quarterly review, just a set of topics you talk about?
I do it with myself. I do my own quarterly review, and I kind of look at, did I hit my sales figures predominantly, like my revenue figure? Revenue is related to sales. If not, why not? And how can I improve it for next time? And it's pretty simple. It's like on that level. This is I think that the next phase is really important to look at, is how many of your thing do you need to sell in order to make your revenue figure? And if you're not doing the selling and you've got someone else doing that for you, you should be, working on that figure with them.
Sales targets.
Yeah, on sales targets. Yeah, super important to be tracking that data in your business. As micro as you want to, really. But ultimately, if you're not hitting your sales targets, either you've set your target too high based on the market, or you're not selling hard enough. I can say this as an ex-salesperson. It's one of the two.
My first job out of engineering, so after I left engineering as an employed person and went into sales, and I remember initially being really excited by the way that it was all quite data driven. We'd have a Monday morning sales meeting and it'd be like, okay, every day you're going to make 20 cold calls, you're going to send 15 letters, you're going to post this many ads, you're going to and it was all top of funnel stuff, like cold outreach all the time. And it's okay, so by the end of a day, you should have made 100 contacts, converted 1%. We said that's a sale. In theory, you should make a sale a day. That was the basic theory of it. And that rang true. But then you've got that conversion rate, which is that bit that's happening in between. So what were your sales meetings like?
So my first sales job was, did you know I used to work for the Engineer magazine?
No.
Is this going to blow your mind?
Really?
Yeah.
What were you selling?
My first publishing sales job was working for one of their sub products, which was a website called E4 Subcon, and it was a website directory for subcontract engineers. And my job back in the good old days of 2002, 2003 was to ring up subcontract engineering companies. So people who would do, you could sub out the work to create bits and bobs, like bits of jet and stuff, and get them to put a banner or a button on our website. And then, because we were connected with the magazine, we'd be like...
So ad sales?
Yeah, all ad sales, basically. So I'd have to ring up an engineering company who probably didn't have a computer on site, or they might have one. And because they were quite small, I had to talk to the boss, but the boss would often be working on the shop floor. So I'd ring up and it would always be like a Janine that answered or whatever. And she'd be like, oh, you need Brian. I'll get him. And puts the phone down. Brian, someone wants to sell you some advertising. I'm coming over. And then Brian would come over.
Tell them to off.
What's a banner? What's a button? What's one of them? I'm like, well, it's £50. It's really reasonable. So that was my first job.
Engineering firms are crap at sales, typically. Engineers, like, why do we need... You mean we need to explain to people why they should make this completely logical...
What's a website?
Yeah, it's a completely logical decision.
No, I'm in the yellow page. I'm in the yellow pages. That'll do. That was like, the sales conversation back there. But my job, I worked with a publisher. It was just me and the publisher of like that product. And then we were part of like the sort of the bigger engineering meetings. But yeah, they were always like, who's made the most calls and who's had the most meetings and then who's brought in the most sales. And when I earned my stripes and I moved up into magazine sales, I went to work for the Creative Review magazine next. And I was a junior display ad salesperson. And I almost didn't make it through the quarter. I found it incredibly difficult to convert people. And they were starting to look at me at the end of the quarter like, we've made a mistake here. Like, she's making all the calls. We can see she's going on the meetings, but the sales aren't coming in yet. And, I got pulled into the publisher's office and it's like, not quite sure it's going to work out. And honestly, I'm not kidding. That day I had the meeting in the morning. Every single sale came in the afternoon. It just like, they were like, yeah, we finally made a decision. And I hit my target. I became top of the board just for one glorious day and was able to then continue my career. Yeah.
I feel like sales is such an underrated domain of expertise. And I don't think, like, a lot of what holds people back in business is fear and emotion. You have to accept, and in sales, like, you get smashed in the face with it. Like, most people aren't going to buy. Like, most people, and a percentage of people are going to be like downright horrible and rude to you. Because like, why are you taking my time up?
Had a few then.
Yeah, and this is the reality of it. And you've got to go through that experience and be like, oh, no, that's not for me. Fine. But you either need to get comfortable that someone else is going to do that on your behalf, and I think that's why digital is really good, or not.
Well, this is what I was thinking as you were chatting just then, is that people don't know what it was like calling up hundreds of businesses every week and having to research. There was no like internet. Like one sales job I had, I worked at a photographic company. There was one computer in the whole building and I had to book it. And it was just easier doing my research and my leads in the evening because they had a database that apparently I could go through, and it was like a real like MS-DOS looking thing, right? And I'd say to my team in my agency, like many, many years later, it's like all I had was like a binder with some paper in it and my phone. And they were like, well, what about your laptop? I was like, laptop? What are you talking about? But, like, I know this is a pleasant trip down memory lane and everything, but like the point I'm making is that I think because people don't know what it's like to pick up the phone and say, hey, Sam, I hear that you work for Sam Jacks. It's great to talk to you. I've just got this offer. I wonder if you've got 5 minutes of your time just to have a quick chat. I promise when you get to the end of this 5 minutes, you'll feel better about yourself, even if you decide not to go ahead with this offer. Are you up for chatting? Yeah, great. You sound really lovely. Okay, great. And there's an art to it, right? And you have to like find that. Now, everybody I talk to from a consulting point of view, can hide behind their website. They can hide behind that barrier to actually having to talk to people. And our candle business, like our theoretical candle business, could do the same. You know, the owner of that never has to talk to their customers in theory. All they have to do is just make sure the website's in front of the right people online where they live, right? And yeah, in many ways that is great, right? And, you know, she never really does have to go through the continual phone putting down issues that I had and subsequent PTSD and neurosis that developed from it, right? Because I think it feels easier because you're not actually having to talk to people. You can forget that there's actually people at the end of that data. There's people at the end of those sales.
So I think it's really important here. We're talking the difference is that you don't have to talk to people one-to-one, but you still have to communicate with people. You're ultimately trying to persuade them. Let's carry on with some more stories, right? There's a few things that we can pull out here that you measure, like cold contacts, phone calls, emails, or this is, you know, social media content that goes out there. We'll talk about the digital version of it. And then you also mentioned about conversion rates. And then we've spoken about the importance of the average transaction value, because I've heard this tactic used many times. When I started in sales, I had a very similar experience. Like, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I started listening to all these audiobooks, Brian Tracy stuff. Like, this is when I got into self-improvement, because I was like, oh my God, I am not earning any money here and I need to earn money. And I heard about this, like this thing, which is a lot more difficult to do online, this law of reciprocity. Like, if you give someone something, they're more likely to give you something. In a sales situation, that's the sale. So another sales job I was selling kitchens, and there's demand for kitchens. People want kitchens. So I started going in with a packet of biscuits or with like a gift for them, like with a something. And I was like, well, this is a bargain. Like, I spend a couple quid at the pound store and I bring some nice coffee with me. I bring some pieces like, oh, I just thought I'd bring these down. You know, the conversion rate then increased. So I was doing the same number of calls, the same number of visits, the same number of conversations, but you then get this better conversion rate. And this is an optimization. And then something else that I was finding is that you could, at the time, this was a long time ago, sell a kitchen or buy a kitchen, should I say, for £5,000 or £6,000 up to, well, you could spend hundreds of £1,000s, but the sort of stuff I was selling, £20,000, £30,000. And there was a senior guy that I was working with. And I remember coming into the job saying, I want to make six figures. So I had my £50,000 figure. Mine was, I want to make six figures. Like, that's my number. I'd never done it at that point. And I had all these leads, these people that I'd qualified to buy kitchens under £10,000. And I started saying, no, I'm not dealing with them, and giving them to him. And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, because I can only service like 5 customers a week. I'm only going to service people that want to buy a £20,000 or £30,000 kitchen. He's like, no, you have to give people a service. It's like, no, I don't. I absolutely don't. Like, and a few people were like, hang on a minute, people are coming to buy from us and you're saying no. And I was like, yeah, you're damn right I am.
Yeah, love this.
And that boosted my conversion rate. I started spending longer with customers that were worth more money. Like, the sale was worth more money. And that wasn't to be disrespectful to people that had less money to spend. I was just like,
no, I hear you.
No, I want to make this much money.
I think we're trained so much to accept every single opportunity and every single sale through culture, right? Always be closing. The customer's always right? And actually, if you can be more discerning about the leads that you have got coming into your business, and that's for product and service-based businesses, right? So from a service-based business point of view, you've got a chance to get some details from someone before you have a call with them, or at least have a call with them so you can assess whether they've got money to spend. Like, that's what we do in the agency. We get people on a will we fit together call, right? Before we even send out any contracts or anything like that. And from a product business, our candle business, you can probably tell the quality of the traffic that you're bringing in based on the message that you put out, right? If you put free, low cost on everything, but actually you're selling £1,000 candle, don't be surprised that the traffic that you bring to your site is not going to convert, right? And I think that's really worth measuring 100% is the conversion rate, because if you are getting people to your thing, if you're doing that hypothetical, bringing them over, leading that horse to water, right? And they're not buying from you, what is it that you can optimize? And I actually believe that should be the main KPI of most businesses, like key performance indicator, is what is your conversion rate? Because let's assume you've got a product that works or a service that works, and you've got a facility, a way of being able to bring those people to look at your product or service and assess whether they want to buy it, right? Then the next step is, are they going to buy it? Have you matched the right person with the right product or service? If not, you probably need to have a better sales process like to do that.
Definitely. I think, again, the Business Bible for our work week, I'm sure he gave some parameters in there, like for e-com sales, he's saying, I want products around about the $200 marks. And bear in mind, this was like 2009 when the book was published. But the point is, I think your instinct often when you're starting out in business is, well, I'm figuring it out. I don't really deserve, or I'm not really capable of the high ticket sale. And so I'm going to start with something around the 20 quid mark. I mean, that's where we went. Maybe subconsciously, we still think that to this 20 quid candle. But there's a lot to be said for going for higher ticket, like tens of thousands, because you can give better service, the margins are better, you can afford to correct mistakes along the way, and you don't have to make as many sales. And the fact is, you're going to fail. Like if the idea is bad, whether you try and sell it at low ticket or high ticket, and it's not going to work, like you find out, like it's going to fail either way. You might as well fail in a business that could work. And I'll be honest, like this is something that took me a long, long time to learn. Like when I had my side hustle and I was doing my apprenticeship and accountancy at night school and whatever else, and I was selling cars on the side. Initially, I was messing around with like 500 quid bangers, £1,000 bangers, but I very quickly found like actually, if I go and sell Range Rovers, okay, it took me a while to get the capital together to do that, but it's the same percentage margin. I was still making 10, 20% on a vehicle, but it was on like a 30 grand vehicle rather than like a £1,000 banger, like where I was making a couple hundred quid. So it still took me like half a day to clean it up. It still took me a day's worth of faffing around with the mechanic to fix whatever was wrong with it. Like it's the same amount of time, similar sort of costs, but the margins were there. So I think if we were to say a data point is average transaction value is really, really important. It wants to be really high.
Can I add another one after this, right, which I think is really important to talk about towards the kind of the end of the life cycle, I think. I look at this measurement all the time in my membership business is churn, right? So if you've spent the money and you've converted someone and you've got them into your world, and in this case, they're paying a monthly subscription, we measure when that user churns. And then we're able to optimize and see if we can convince them to stay or at least get them back. So that's what churn means in the kind of membership or subscription world, right? And it's very similar to getting a returning customer to come back. So if that's not like relevant to anyone listening, then if you sell a product, then it's going to be cheaper and easier to get someone who's already bought from you before to come back. Absolutely, repeat customers. So I think like they're really important things to look at as well, because we spend a lot of time in our businesses, especially in the startup phase, just top of funnel, cold, getting people in. But actually, as they move down that funnel, it gets easier to convert them because they've heard of you. Sam, I don't need the pitch from you again. I know what you sell. I'm just not quite ready right now. So, you need to keep them in your back pocket. Understanding when people decide not to come back to you, or how often they come back to you, or when they decide like to cancel a subscription, really important, because that's going to cost you less to retain them than keep filling up that top of funnel.
Absolutely. And again, it gets into those questions, like those people that decide not to buy from you or they drop off, you go find out why. Right. I reckon we take a left turn, a hard left, and we've kind of spoke about a lot of sales optimization, marketing optimization, like
bit of finance as well.
The fundamentals of making your business work. Like this is the important foundational stuff. Do we want to do a segment just before we finish up on time tracking, optimization of time, and maybe a little bit on how AI is going to change the way we use data or look at data, make it more useful?
Yeah, for sure.
We've said like it's important to measure stuff, and then it's how it's measured. Have you seen these companies that are using time tracking software on their employees' laptops, like so that they take pictures of the screen and they measure what they're doing like every minute of every day?
Yeah, I mean, okay, like from a business optimization point of view, without any emotion attached to this, I can kind of understand where those businesses are coming from. Because when I hire someone on Upwork, for example, Upwork does that, right? So you can opt to track someone's screen, like it takes screenshots a few times, like a minute over the time that they're time tracking for, so that you can see that they're doing the thing that they're meant to do. And it's to stop you having distrust that freelancer is subbing that work out to someone else, right? And that you're actually getting the person that you're paying for, right? And everyone seems pretty cool with it on Upwork, and there's a sort of an understanding about it. And I'm paying for that resource, and I want to make sure that I have a good experience, and Upwork want to make sure that there's a good experience there as well. When I saw that big businesses are doing this on remote work employees' laptops, the first thing you think of is, oh, God, that's awful. But then I'm like, but I get why. Because when people are at home, they behave different, right? They don't work 9 to 5 in front of, they don't do performance work like we do when we're in an office where, oh my God, like the amount of times I was sat there just doing the weekly shop at work because I had nothing to do. Sorry, old bosses of the past, but here you go. Like, here's the truth, or listening to a podcast or whatever. I could have done that work later, right? But this goes back to what you said almost, I think it was in like the first or second episode of the pod, like Sam, which is if you've got remote workers, you should be tracking by the task, the outcome, not the time spent. And I think that as a business metric to track is definitely a fool's errand, right? There are so many examples of when data is used incorrectly in businesses. And I think like that's one of them. I think also when I hear small businesses telling me how many views of their website they've had, and I'm like, yeah, but how many things have you sold? Isn't that more important? I get a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, my SEO score is gone down a couple of points. I'm like, what does it matter? How much do you sell via search? Like, that's the metric you should be tracking, right?
I've worked with a few virtual assistant agencies and in big businesses, and they opt for time tracking. Like, how many hours, what percentage utilization have we got from our staff? And it's like, Jesus Christ, that is lazy. Like, okay, it's a piece of data, but actually measuring outcome is so much more efficient. I think it was Cameron Herold, the Chief Operating Officer Alliance chap. Shout out to Cameron, like real top bloke, published author, check out his stuff. He said, when you onboard a new person, rather than telling them how many hours they've got to work, how about just giving them a checklist to hand in at the end of the week? Like, get all this stuff done. And in the aerospace world, my team and I, we had software we had to deliver 4 times a year. And it took us about 12 weeks ago. Team of about 10 people. And this is basically all we did. And we wanted to work on more innovative stuff because we were working with pilot and aircrew who were saying, look, we really could do with these features. And we were going, well, we ain't got any time to do it. And we would ask, can we go work on this other stuff from the people that were managing the contract and the budget? And they went, sure, go realize an opportunity and save us some time somewhere and we'll give you the time. So we came up with this hypothetical question, which is, what would it take for us to do this 12-week delivery in one day? And it wasn't, had we said, all right, well, is everybody working? How can we do it quicker? And everyone's working 40 hours a week and you may be taking 2 weeks off every 12 weeks or 1 week off every 12 weeks. Right, well, it'd be quicker. We'll do it faster if everyone works 50 hours rather than 40 hours. Like, no, that's wrong. That's not the way to make that more efficient. And the way we did it was that we broke down into real granular detail all of the tasks. I'm talking like, at one point we had to put some software on a CD. It's like, and it was secret, so there's all these protocols. Okay, there's a check. Get the name from this database for the CD. Get the pen and write it on. Take this CD and store it in this cabinet. Like, check. And instead of someone going, oh yeah, at some point we're going to burn this software to a CD. Oh yeah, I'll need to get a CD. Oh yeah, I'll need to get a pen. Like, it was like, no, do the things in this order. And it's a 30-second operation, as opposed to someone could fanny around doing that for an hour. And that's what was happening. That was the reality of it. It's like, okay, well, we've got these 18 documents to write, and then there's a 2-week review process, and then we have to like track down all the people that need to sign them. It's like, no, these 4 lines are going to change in these documents each time. So we'll change those. We'll review all 18 documents inside of an hour with the people that need to sign them, and they'll all be done in that moment. And we did it. We got this process down into a day, and it got awards and all kinds of stuff. And then they've repurposed all that time on stuff that didn't matter. But the point is, like, time's important, but just how much time you're spending is not the way to do things more efficiently.
Totally get this. I must confess, though, in my little agency, we are tracking time and have been since September. And the purpose, right, isn't to big brother anybody. It's actually to get a sense of whether we are taking too long on things that we're selling, basically, and then be able to understand, can we optimize those things? Should we stop selling those things? Should we put the price up on those things? And like, that is the real reason behind doing that. Because of it, like, I'll be like breaking some of the services that we blend in at the moment out into their own separate products, but without being able to look at the time that certain tasks are taking. Now, to your point, right, a lot of these tasks that we have aren't SOP'd either. Like, there's no standard operating procedure for them. So that's another thing that we can look at doing as well. But
time tracking is great for current state. Like,
Yeah,
what are we doing currently? Okay, that's our baseline. Like, you need that.
yeah, definitely. But I think as data in your business, like, and I just hark back to the agency days when I was the time tracking police, it was boring, and it just chasing up people to track incomplete, very incorrect data, because people would just be estimating, oh, well, I think that probably took me an hour, not quite sure. Like, it was pointless busy work, and it was, but it was part of the contract that we had with clients, was to tell them how much time we were spending on their thing. And, plenty of times I'd be looking through the timesheets and someone would be like, and 2 hours, and their description would be adding value. What happened in those 2 hours? How are you adding value?
Adding value. I have this fantasy of running my business like a sports team. Because like a sports team, you don't measure like how many hours were you running, how many hours were you lifting weights. Like, that's not a useful metric. What's useful is to say, right, we're going to do a few hours of this particular like technique or whatever. And I imagine in a business, like, I don't care if people fanny around for half the day. Like, are they effective at getting the job done? And I always imagine that it would be great to say to people, between 10 in the morning and 12, we're going to do like a team, like focused. That's when we're going to get all the doing done. And then 2 till 4, we're going to do all of the like creative work, and then do whatever you want for the rest of the time. We're just going to focus for those. And it's, you can't measure focus time. Last one, AI. Have you looked at this Adept thing I've sent you?
Well, no, I haven't. I've been in chat.openai all week talking with, it's now my best friend. Obviously, anyone listening to this, it literally came out like a week ago, and it's taken over Twitter. And I think people are talking about it on LinkedIn as well.
It's bonkers.
Oh my God. And did you see the thread that I added you in on Twitter, where one programmer has been trying to break it and jailbreak it, basically, by asking the AI to do stuff it's not meant to do. And then I think it's a she, is trying to circumnavigate like its commands to get it to like, talk about Hitler being nice and things like that. Like, there's me, but going, oh, maybe AI might write me some really good blog content.
People are using it for all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, how can we make the end of the world come about? It's like, oh my goodness me. Like, people go down some dark rabbit holes.
I think my favorite thing though this week from it was a guy I saw on Instagram. He videoed himself asking it to explain the to be or not to be speech from Hamlet, like you would to kindergarten class. And then he read it out, and I was like, oh, that's what that speech means.
That's what that meant.
Oh, like, I'm 43 and I'm like, oh, I get Shakespeare now. Okay, that's great. Like, it could help our understanding in a really safe way, right?
From a systems engineer point of view, this is why Google is ruined now. Because I'm saying this provocatively, Google's going to have a purpose. But the way Google works is that they process data more efficiently. And what they process is all of this data that people have shoved onto the web and connected up. They go, okay, well, you've put in a query. I'm going to figure out, based on this very clever, very complex algorithm, which does have some AI in there, like, which of these pre-prepared answers that other people have prepared is the best answer to serve you. Okay, you've asked that. Okay, I'll serve you this. AI doesn't work like that. You ask a question, and AI goes and creates the best answer based off all of that information. It interprets that information. You get such a tailored response. Plus, it can do all this other clever stuff. Like, you can't compete with that. It's like Jarvis from Iron Man. Like, it's got a level of intelligence. It's like having a personal assistant that can interpret all the Google results. And the thing that's like amazing about this is people are using this framework, the GTP3 and soon to be GTP4, to perform action. So now, like we're saying, okay, well, there's a way to make your process more efficient. You've got a virtual assistant, let's say, and you need them to add every email that comes into your CRM and then follow up with a nice intro and say, this is who we are, blah, blah, blah. And so you write a standard operating procedure. Okay, this is how you do it. It's game changing what Adept and these other people are doing, because in the way that I just explained that you're going to be able to spank Google by just asking AI these questions, you will be able to ask Adept like, hey, I need to increase sales and I need to sell more when this person comes into my business. And AI will go, all right. You don't write this SOP. It'll go figure all that out. It'll go, okay, well, I'm going to add them to the CRM. I'm going to send them an email from Facebook. I know that they're this type of person, so I'll include this little hook and ask them about how their child's getting on at school. Like, and it'll be able to do all this crazy, like, it's intelligent. And I cannot explain how exciting that is, because it's now going to be like, oh, I've got a business idea and this is the benefit and these are the features. And AI it can't at the moment, but will be able to just go build the whole business for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a bit preemptive. However,
I think it's there.
I am as excited as you, only because I think, yeah, this will tear apart the info-led SEO industry, definitely, because what pisses me off about the SEO like world industry, whatever you want to call it, is that the people who are really good at gaming Google can get their page to the top, right? And, you know, aside from like fame and brand awareness and stuff like that, right? And so when you have a question about something, you have to like sort through a lot of business blog website content first before you really get the answer. And most of the time, I just put in my query into Google and then I slap Reddit on the end now, because I want to go and see what real people are talking about. I don't want to read a financial blog where they're trying to help me with my thing, but actually at the end of that blog, the call to action is, well, if you want to know more, call me, right? And using Chat AI and these other tools to actually say, like, what should I do about a HR issue? How do I go out and find more leads? Like, that just takes away that friction of having to be a really good researcher, right? So, like, amazing from that point of view. And then, yeah, absolutely, like, being able to understand how to connect the dots between loads of tech, totally game changer. If you could program AI to know Zapier inside and out and know what Zapier is needs connecting to what and what would work really well for you, it could just output a plan for you, like a contract I saw on Twitter that this lawyer had asked OpenAI to write, and he was like, oh my God, we're going out of business. He wrote an entire contract and he only had to do like some minor edits to that. So
nuts. I best sell my SEO lead gen business then fast.
I do love SEO, but like, I feel like if you want true answers to stuff, and Google knows this as well, because it brought out its helpful content update back in August, September of this year. It knows that we're getting a lot of corporate fluff with the answers to real questions. It knows that. And I don't think they're being left behind. I think they're ahead of the game here somewhere, in their vaults, in their labs somewhere.
I hope so. I'm excited to see what Google do. I'm excited to see what the Siri and Alexa do, because this is nuts. Like, this is next level. But most of all, like, what I desperately want to do now is carve out most of my time to work on this. I'm ready to build iRobot. That's where I want to be.
You're an AI junkie starting here.
Oh, I love it. I think it's brilliant, especially when you go mechatronics land, start building like physical things that exist, not just like on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, well, I saw a guy who said on Twitter he's been pair programming with OpenAI, and that blew my mind, because, you know, one of the things we were just talking about, time tracking, which is quite stressful as a software project manager, is giving a developer enough space and input and the conditions to be able to be a great developer. And sometimes working a problem out with someone else is how you get the best work out of a dev, right? A software dev.
Rubber ducking,
yeah. You might not have the resources to do that. So sorry, you got to go and sit in a room on your own. Don't get distracted. Sit and do your coding. And if you've got a problem, go on GitHub or a chat forum like everybody else, right? But if you can give them an AI tool, the optimization there is like the opportunities are massive, are endless.
If you're watching on YouTube, do smash the like button, do hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We do read all the reviews, all one of them so far. No, there's a few.
Thanks, Mum.
If you're on Spotify, please rate us. You can do the 5-star thing. I do head over to YouTube and type in the comments. Let us know what you thought, if you have any questions. And also, what would you like us to cover in these episodes? Because we talk with all the people that we work with, clients, people in Vicky's community and on email, and we use your feedback to decide what to put in the episode. So please let us know. Or if you're just happy that with our rambles, we'll keep doing that.
Brilliant. All right.